Hello, everyone. We are back once again with another episode of the Young and Foolish podcast. And this week, as you guys will see if you're watching the video version, that it's just going to be Lorenzo and me.
Yes, sir.
And the topic is something that I am very interested in. At least there are aspects of this topic that I'm really interested in, and that is urban planning. And there's a few main points I want to talk about, I want to discuss with you. And I feel like this might not be the most important point, but it's definitely the one that I am most interested in, the one that I have thought the most about, I have consumed the most information about, I have the most kind of experience, personal experience to relate to topic with. And I suppose we should start off with that, and that is more of kind of the car dependency
Yes, sir.
of North American cities and especially North American suburbs. But I just want to, to kind of, I guess, outline this episode. I do want to talk about later on the most important aspects of kind of a city, a urban area, just the important things to have, right? Mm-hmm. In terms of infrastructure, in terms of what do you call it? Facilities and whatnot, mm-hmm. right? So I do want to get into that. That is something I think is very important, actually probably more relevant to most people. And probably something people think more about, right? But the kind of place I want to start off with is something that I, like I said, have thought a lot about and something that I am really interested in. And that is the kind of car usage, the way mm-hmm. North American cities and like I said, especially suburbs are designed, the way that it's very car centric, the way that it kind of basically forces you to use a car. Right, there's no getting around mm-hmm. That almost, right? Depending on where you live exactly, but overall, there's a very high dependency and focus towards car usage.
Yeah, cities are designed around cars, basically. Nowadays.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for mm-hmm. sure. And I guess, to just give some background, why I'm talking about this specifically, why North American cities and car usage specifically, it's kind of important to go over the alternatives that exist and also kind of the history behind it, mm-hmm. right? Just because a lot of people here probably might
you never think
feel
about
like that's the only way. They're just so used to it, like it's so natural.
It's the default,
Yeah, exactly, right? So that's why I want to give some background first before we really kind of get into this aspect of the topic. And to start off, I guess I'll start off with kind of how North American cities were kind of beforehand, because it wasn't always like this, right?
Yeah, no.
I mean, obviously, at one time there weren't any cars.
Yeah.
But so originally, right, started off being colonies, so it's mm-hmm. small kind of settlements basically, and what you will have is, it's all along the east coast essentially, but all you will have is kind of in terms of like a community, in terms of, because a lot of it is more spread out and almost just kind of out in the wilderness almost. So but in the more kind of towns that were first established, you basically will have the shop, right? You will have like the church, you have the pub, though those are kind of the essential things. All right. It allows people to trade, it allows people to get together, and mm-hmm. the church obviously is also very important in that respect. And then a lot of from there, right, that's kind of the center, and then you develop with the influx of immigrants, with people giving birth and having large families, and just wealth developing, and you build infrastructure. And so that's going to act as the center. And then from there, you kind of go outwards, right? So it's like a very circular, or at least oval, depending on which city it is. Yeah, so you have like kind of the centerpiece with all those essential stuff, and from there you kind of expand outwards like that, and it's a very natural thing. And as you grow, you have shops, you have other just the important stuff. You're gonna have all those built when you're building outwards, and it's gonna stay pretty, convenient and walkable, which is kind of the big thing I'm about, the walkability of cities. Right. And then you talk about other cities being developed in North America, especially outwards, right? The Western expansion and all that. It's mainly based on the railroad, right? It's something that it's a major part of North American history. And with that, you kind of grow from the railway stations. That's kind of the centerpiece. With that, you're going to have shops, you're going to have pubs. So the basic things you're going to have. And from there, once again, you're going to start growing outwards. You're going to expand naturally in kind of a circular base, right? Circular format around the center acting as a base, right? As a foundation. So all of those still, once again, made cities walkable, right? They didn't have cars. They didn't have those things anyway.
Even just beyond how, I guess, the area grew and kind of originated from, beyond that, just the nature of the roads themselves back then were just more walkable, right? Like you still had especially in like some of the bigger cities, I think, you still had bigger roads for like carriages and whatnot, obviously, but pedestrians, you can just walk, the roads were for the pedestrians too.
Yeah, exactly. They share the road. Yeah.
Yeah. So even just beyond like the kind of like circular growth and like that radial growth out from like the center and like the natural growth that you get from that, which also contributes to the walkability of it. Just the roads themselves were different too, which is just such a big factor, I think.
Yeah. And that is a point I want to get back to because there's something I want to relate to when we're talking about alternatives, right? So later on, it was really the end of World War II. That's really when everything was changing, right? A lot of stuff. It was kind of the development of consumerism. It really goes hand in hand with that. It has a lot to do with the influx of wealth coming into the country, as obviously the war economically was pretty good for North America in general, and also you have an influx of immigrants from Europe and other places who are kind of seeking new opportunities, and North America having the war being fought in Europe, even though you were involved, but it wasn't fought on your land, right? So you weren't affected in that way, and also you just didn't have that many people to begin with. So there's just a lot of different factors goes into it. But from all of those things, they start kind of expanding cities. They kind of doing new things with infrastructure, with urban planning, and with housing development, right? So that's kind of where you start getting suburbs. That's when you kind of see urban sprawls come into play, and you see a lot of people moving out of the city. And another reason why people are moving out of the city is because there is like a higher crime rate, right? You have people coming in to work for whatnot, and just have a lot of, there are very good reasons for people to want to move out of the city, essentially, right?
Yeah.
And in many ways, cities weren't, there are plenty of residential areas in the city that aren't exactly nice, right? So it's very understandable how this development kind of happened. But that's kind of the start of it. And that's how you got a lot of roads being built, a lot of highways being built, and a lot of separation between the city and the suburb. A lot more zoning laws came in place from that time, and then going forward there'll be even more, right? So you just have all these different factors come into play that really paved the way for it to become the way it is now. And so much really haven't changed, right? You still have all the suburbs, the highways, if anything, just got wider and more, and the zoning is even more strict and more specific, right? The type of house you can build on certain land, what you can use certain areas for, and there's a separation between business, between industry, between housing and residential, I should say, and like that separation, basically, that separation and exactly, so that separation, and also the way the roads are built, it's really incentivizing people to use cars. And if you are moving out of the city for all those good reasons,
I feel like it's not even incentivizing. I think it's only enabled by the existence and use of cars, or automobiles just in general. Because like we were talking about earlier, about and like when you talked about World War II, I'm assuming, I don't know the exact numbers, but I'm assuming before World War II, the use of cars existed, because I mean the cars were around back then, but it's only grown more and more popular. From like the turn of the century, the 19th century, when I'm sure cars were more of a luxury good, or more niche, I suppose. They weren't really commonplace. It wasn't expected for you to have a car, and just why would you drive a car when you got a horse, bro? Or why would you drive a car when you can just walk to work? And then as the cities get bigger, and as you get cars, it's like, okay, I have a car now. I can just go live in the suburbs where there's, like you mentioned, lower crime rate and all that jazz, but it's not going to impact my work, because I can still drive out to work just fine. All that jazz. I'd be interested to know when roads became like regulated for cars. I don't know when that would have happened at all, because I'm assuming at the beginning you could probably just drive cars just on any regular road, right? Just like how a carriage would be. Because at some point,
I'm not exactly sure how that worked. Yeah, that would be interesting to see. Yeah. But also, like you're saying, like cars were expensive, right? And then with Ford, right, with the production lines and then all of that kind of. He actually, a very interesting life, had a lot, really influential overall. Like, honestly, like it kind of gets overlooked nowadays. People don't really talk about all the different things he did and the interesting and controversial person he actually is. There's so many different aspects to him.
Yeah, I just know him for the production line, so that goes to show.
Yeah, but even that alone,
that's huge.
Yeah, even that alone is absolutely huge. But with various things, but especially the production lines, the cost of cars, came to be more affordable, right? But even I think in that time, I think houses might have been cheaper than cars. I don't know when the lines crossed. I can't remember, but like
it's
hard to
crazy, because back in the day, it used to be that your car was what was it? Was it more expensive than your house, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The car was like
at one point.
Yeah, you'd want to park it out front, show off to your friends, all that jazz.
Yeah. And also, like that's why, like, it's a wealthy people who had the money to move out to the suburbs that did it, who could afford cars that did it, right? And like I said, a lot of workers, a lot of poor people were in certain residential areas in the city, and they're there for work. They're there to be a part of the city life and all of that. And there's also higher crime rate because of those things, right? So that's why the people wanted to move out, and the people who could afford cars, they were able to do that, right? Because they could afford that. But pretty wild that cars were more expensive than housing. But a lot of that is just like land.
And it's insane.
But land was so cheap back then, right? So like it kind of made sense. And you're building a house, like people knew how to build houses. The material weren't that crazy, but cars at that time. Like I said, I can't remember when exactly the lines crossed, but at one point, cars were more expensive.
It wasn't for a long time. I'm pretty sure it was still a case in like the 50s and 60s, probably even 70s, I think. This might have been the case. I don't know about 70s.
What do you do? I think maybe late 50s at the 50s? Latest.
At the most, maybe. I'm pretty sure 60s. 70s definitely not. The more I think about it, 70s no, but I think maybe during the
No,
60s.
I don't think 60s.
You don't think so?
Like I said,
We gotta
these
Google this.
numbers and all that,
We
we
must
gotta
Google
find
this. We
that
gotta
out.
figure this out right now.
But yeah, as Lorenzo's finding that out, I'll kind of continue on. But yeah, the whole point is that like you have people moving out to the suburbs. You have the suburbs being developed. You are getting these different zones. You are getting all these highways and roads, and there's really kind of a focus on cars, and that only got more exaggerated as time went on, because you kind of talk about the American dream. You kind of talk about the advertisement, even in beer advertisement. What do you show? You show a happy family living in the suburbs, right? Who have all these things. One of the most famous beer advertisement was that it was just coming home after work to be with your family in a nice house in the suburbs, and cracking open a cold beer, right? Enjoying it. So that kind of image of that family life, of the suburban family life, especially of the middle class, all of that was really being portrayed, and that was really advertised, and that was something that people really looked, really kind of wanted, essentially. And that's one reason. But like I said, for many reasons, the suburbs and the focus on car, the dependence on car, and the increase in car usage has just increased and exaggerated. And that's kind of how you get what you have now in North America, where basically everyone has a car, not just every family, but like almost, well, not almost, but like a lot of people have cars. Like in a single family, you have more than one car. It's very normal for a family to have more than one car. And in some cases, everyone has a car. I'm not going to say that's like all cases, because it obviously isn't. But you also have a lot of people who just have multiple cars because hobbies and whatnot. But that's kind of a separate scenario. Not really the point here. But that's kind of a bit of a background on how you have what you have now in North America with the dependence on cars. And I guess it's, like I said, it's important to talk about alternatives here, right? I don't know if I should talk about alternatives first, or I should talk about kind of why I don't like the car, like the problems that a lot of people have, and the problems that actually exist statistically and whatnot with the car dependency. I don't know which one to start off.
I don't know.
What do you
think?
think?
By the way, I couldn't figure out when those lines crossed, but I think before we talk about either of those, I think it would be really good just to take a quick second, maybe explain why we're interested in this. I know that I first became kind of acutely aware of this kind of change in development when I first went to Spain, and I got to stay in the old city of Cadiz, or the old sector, the historical area, because I was walking in all these tiny little alleyways. Basically, they're just everywhere. All the roads are super small. Yeah, a couple big ones, but I'm sure those weren't around for. They haven't been around for nearly as long as the smaller little alleyways that you find everywhere. And that's how most cities used to be, or a lot of cities used to be. The roads were much narrower. Like we mentioned, they were more walkable, so the nature of the roads was different. And I think the grid-like pattern that you see in North America in pretty much every single city just wasn't quite as common. I'm sure the grid system has to predate the car. Because, of course they would have made a city with a grid at some point, but not a whole city. But then when you had cars coming in, it just makes more sense. You're making these giant suburbs super quick. Well, not super quick, but relatively speaking, the growth was very, very fast.
It's definitely quick.
Very fast. So you're more likely to take your time and plan things out. You had these big companies building loads and loads of houses all at once, which I'm sure wasn't the case 100 years beforehand. They weren't building a massive complex where they're this complex is going to have 150 units or whatever, right? It just wasn't. Nobody did that, right? So when you're doing it, it makes sense. You'd want to optimize it for car use, right? So especially as the rest of the city as well is transitioning to car use, then your construction is going to become much more grid-like, less walkable, relatively wide roads. If you go to Europe, in a lot of areas, you'll see the roads are much narrower. And
that's why you don't see giant pickup trucks and whatnot in Europe.
Exactly.
Like those, they can't, like they literally just won't fit.
I've always wondered how they do
you
like
can't
a lot of
park it
maintenance
anywhere
stuff.
either.
Like, yeah, when you need to do like these big maintenance things, or if you need to like deliver something big, I'm really curious how they get around some of those smaller alleys sometimes, because I'm sure it's been a problem at some point. But yeah, I feel like that was just important to mention before we went on to those other two topics, just to give a bit of background to other people who might not be so aware of, people who have not put much thought into this before. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I feel like this ties really into kind of the alternatives to this that people might not be aware of, right? So I'll kind of start off with my experience. Even as a child, I remember how convenient everything was in China. Obviously, China developed extremely quickly, and what it was back when I was living there as a child is very different than what it is now in many ways. The amount of urban projects and infrastructure growth and whatnot, and just changes, buildings being built and being teared down and rebuilt, and just expanding outwards, have all these new areas like that. It's a whole thing, right? But in many areas in China, obviously that still exists. In general, like there are plenty of neighborhoods where you could still have the kind of convenience that I experienced when I was living there. And if you're just staying within that kind of neighborhood where you have everything you kind of need anyway, then you don't need a car, right? But if you are, going to other places for whatever reason, China is still very car dependent in that sense. They do have a railway, right? They even have high speed rail. Don't know how good that whole project is, but pretty impressive. And the railway system is pretty good. A lot of people use it. But the really impressive one, I don't know how useful and beneficial it actually is. I feel like that's more just a flex. But China is car dependent in some ways. And obviously car usage is very high and people are getting cars more and more. But like I said, I experienced some extreme convenience while I was living in China as a child, and that still exists in many neighborhoods, in many cities, right? It's still a very normal thing. Yeah. And then when I was in Australia for like a 1.5 year, almost 2 years, I lived in downtown Melbourne. And that was definitely very walkable. And outside of that, you have the train, you have the tram. The tram was very convenient. So if you're in just the downtown area, no problem, walkable. If you're going anywhere, a bit out and whatnot, you got the tram. If you're going to a different city, you got the train, right? Like these things are being used, and overall, it's convenient, and it's not. Car dependent, but I know the Australian suburbs and smaller Australian cities, right, and even outskirts of the actual downtown area, they have the same kind of car dependent issues. It's like how Vancouver, the actual downtown. That's the next I want to get into. Like every single time I went downtown Vancouver, I felt how walkable it is, how convenient it is, right? And that's kind of one other reason why I became interested in this, why I started thinking about it more and more, right? Because I saw the huge difference. And obviously I'm in, downtown Vancouver a lot more than I am in other places, right? So, so I've experienced these kind of car dependent areas and cities, right, since I was a child, and also in the place I grew up, Vancouver, right? And then when I really thought about it is having like you, I've been to various European cities, and when you go to some of the older cities, the cities where the history and the historical buildings and the way it was designed before still is maintained, still exists, you really feel that, okay, this is really cozy, this is really walkable, the nature of this, it's just very people friendly. It's designed for people, it's not designed for cars. Exactly. It's not car dependent. Exactly, right? And even newer parts of cities or newer cities in general, the focus is just different. Like there are some other aspects we get into, but like just it's just a very different style of building urban planning in general.
I remember I was quite shocked when I first came into Cadiz, because on the bus to the place where we were staying at, we had a host family, very nice. But on the way there, on the bus from the airport to the house we were going to be staying at, we got to go through Cadiz, like the actual city. On our way to the historical area where it's like walled off. They still have the old wall and all that jazz.
Yeah.
And all the historical buildings. And it just looks more or less like any other city. Like it seemed like if you took that beyond, if you took a picture of the roads in like the city of Cadiz, at least in the roads that I went through, the ones that I remember, my memory of it.
Yeah.
If you showed me a picture of that, I would be like, okay, I can't tell where this is from. This just seems like a regular average
modern city.
Yeah, just a modern city in some Spanish speaking country. That's basically it. Or if you replaced all the text with I don't know, English, you legit could have probably convinced me that it was from somewhere in Vancouver. Probably could have, to be honest with you.
Yeah. But like some differences are like the buildings in general, they're not gonna have a lot of really tall buildings.
Yeah, no skyscrapers.
In fact, there's a lot of restriction to that, right? There's definitely, in general, are more focus on public transit, right? So even smaller cities, you might find trams or subways and whatnot, like streetcars, right? Whereas, I live in London, Canada right now for school, and it's literally one of the worst in terms of urban planning.
First or worst?
Worst.
You cut out worst. Oh, rough.
Worst. Yeah. Actually, a channel that's really good in talking about this is called Not Just Bikes, and he's actually from here. He lives in Netherlands now.
I think I've seen a couple of his videos.
Yeah. But pretty like a city of this size, both in terms of geographically and also in terms of population, you would expect public transit to be much more developed than it is. Like the bus line isn't terrible. Like it's not great, but like you would think that there might be, I don't know, streetcars or whatnot. Yeah, there might be, just other things that could be done. But no, it's very car centric and the traffic is bad. And that's kind of tying into the next thing I want to talk about, which is all the kind of negative aspect, all the problems, and also just certain things that I don't like about it personally, the car dependency of North American cities and especially North American suburbs. But before we get into that, let me just think because I think there is some other thing I wanted to touch on. In terms of alternatives, right? So, even newer places are built different in other parts of the world. Like Europe is kind of the example I like to give. Obviously, Europe is made up of a lot of different countries. A lot of different cities are going to be built differently, right? There's going to be a lot of different philosophies and approaches to it. But you could look at Netherlands, the place Not Just Bike guy, lives in now, a place that's kind of famous for, riding bikes. Yeah. But like, if it's bikeable, it's probably walkable too in general. But like you see a lot of newer areas of cities, like they're not designed the way cities here are. Like they still look modern and whatnot, but like there's a focus on bike lanes. There's a focus on narrowing of roads in places that's logical to do so, right? One thing that he talked about was the design speed of a road, right? You design a road, right? A street, where it's wide, it's open, there's no trees or, separation, anything like that on either side. You could put the speed limit and could set it at whatever. But when people are just driving, they're going to that's not gonna be natural. That naturally they would drive at a much quicker speed, and they're gonna be reminded of that only when they see the speed limit, or when they see kind of a speedometer or whatever it's called, the thing that checks your speed, right? Whereas when you have narrowing of the roads in certain places, when you have things where you have separation for the bike lane instead of just a wide line, people don't even shoulder check a lot of the times. Like they'll literally drive in the bike lane. They'll make a turn, like they'll make a right turn or something across the bike lane without doing a shoulder check because they didn't see any pedestrian there. Well, if someone's actually riding a bike there, you just turn without making sure then it's rip. And that thing happened here in North America because it's just a white line.
Like that's a big point because I've always wanted to ride my bike again, but I'm like, I just don't I'd probably be okay statistically speaking. I'd be okay riding in on like a bike lane, but like just the general attitude around cyclists here and just seeing how just looking at the bike lane, it's just like, why would I want to do that? Why would I want to do that? Yeah. No, thank you. But I look at bike lanes in other countries and I'm like, I'd feel perfectly comfortable riding that. That's fine.
Yeah, it'll be nice.
Exactly.
It'll be a very enjoyable experience, right?
Yeah.
And another thing I want to get into that touches on this is induced demand, right? That's a huge thing that's gonna kind of tie into kind of few things. But continuing with this point, right? You're gonna have separation for the bike lanes. You're gonna have trees on either side, right? You're gonna make the road and the sidewalk on the same level, right? Instead of like a huge separation, it's gonna feel like more old school stuff, like older cities where things are just blended together, where people share the road. And if it's in a more residential neighborhood or just a smaller street, like that kind of area, you're definitely gonna have a street that's designed where it's not separated. Right, it's not going to be leveled off with a sidewalk, the concrete sidewalk raised. Right, you're not going to kind of have that. It's going to feel a lot more kind of. When you feel closer to people, you're going to drive more carefully. You're going to drive slower. Like they do so many different things together that really just makes it more people friendly. Right, and also incentivizes people to walk, to bike, and whatnot, right? So there's just a huge difference in terms of design that makes it less car dependent and also safe and comfortable for people, right? So also you're gonna have shops, grocery stores and whatnot. Like, yeah, you're going to have malls. Yeah, you're going to have downtown. Well, downtown in general is going to be more walkable anyway, even though some North American cities have giant street downtown. And oftentimes those areas actually are doing pretty poor financially because no one really wants to be there, right? So, they design the streets like that, but also in terms of shops, in terms of zoning and whatnot, there are going to be differences that allow people to get to where they're going to be doing things, right? And the other huge thing is that they're going to have squares. They're going to have public squares. You're going to have these plazas, right? You're going to have these places where people can actually gather. So it's just more people focused in various ways, right? That's not directly tied into walkability, but you could see the difference in philosophy in terms of design. And the thing is, you literally have squares everywhere except for North America. Like there are plenty of public squares in China, in other Asian countries, all over Europe. You're going to have it in the Latin American countries, in the Caribbean countries, right? I don't know too much about Africa, so I can't really speak on that. But in a lot of North American places, you're not going to have a public square. Like you're not going to have a public place for people to gather, right? So the whole design, it's just very focused on cars, focused on getting from one place to another as opposed to focus on people and the community and having places where people are just going to stay and be, right? It's not sectioned off like that. It's not segmented like that, right?
Yeah, it's kind of all integrated together.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
so that's kind of the alternative, right? There are many different styles of doing this, but overall, you're going to have all these different factors coming together that makes it walkable for people and less car dependent, right? And now is when I want to get into all the negative things about it, about kind of the high car dependency, about the high car usage and the way North American cities are designed, right? Especially suburbs, once again, because there are some North American cities like Vancouver that's actually pretty good, right? Not that many.
You cut out there. I didn't hear you for that bit.
Oh, I said there are some North American cities like Vancouver that's actually really good in that respect. So obviously there aren't that many. A lot of North American cities aren't, but North American suburbs, like overall, are just terribly planned in that sense. And literally very, very, very few suburbs in North America, and all of those are like old stuff that didn't really get rebuilt and whatnot.
I was about to mention earlier when you were talking about your experiences in China, and I'm assuming that neighborhood that you lived in China was probably not a brand new development, right? It had been around for at least a little bit, right? I'm assuming.
Yeah, it wasn't brand new. It wasn't brand new. No.
Okay, yeah. I'm assuming like the newer developments that you're talking about, it's still normal for you to see that stuff in China, but probably not any of the new stuff that's being built, right? For the most part.
It depends. China is building so many new stuff all the time. It really depends on the neighborhood and the city. Yeah. Like you literally have like ghost towns in China. Yeah. Like they literally just built for the sake of building and no one moves. Oh my goodness. The whole defaulting thing is actually... Man, it's gonna be huge. The effect of it is gonna be so big. It's ridiculous.
It's crazy.
Like obviously they're defaulting on their foreign bonds first, right? Because if they start doing madness in China, then that's gonna be terrible, and the government just isn't gonna allow them to do that. So obviously they're defaulting first with the foreign bonds, and I don't know like what exactly happened, and I don't know if they've defaulted anymore, but like there is like cross default clauses in a lot of bonds and whatnot, right? So basically that just means if you default on one thing, if you can't make the payment to your loan on one loan, because that clause exists, you automatically default on the other ones as well, because these people you owe money to are saying, hey, we need our share, you do pay us back too. Like it's just a way of making sure legally that the person doesn't have kind of a that you're not losing out your money, right? So like an example is like maybe you have a car mortgage and a house mortgage, right? If you default on one of those, if you don't make the payment, you also default on the other. Yeah. So both parties have a claim to your money, right? So that's a way of protecting themselves, right? So the whole debacle is going to just be insane. Yeah. But that's beside the point.
Besides the point, yes, sir. But exciting nonetheless. To some. Very sad for others. Who knows?
Yeah, it really depends on where you are, your assets, and the whole situation. And also, no one knows exactly how it's going to play out. So we'll see. But huge news.
Big
if
news.
You didn't hear about it, you should definitely look into it because it's absolutely huge. So the thing I want to get into now is the negatives of it, right? The negatives are the high car dependency and car usage, and just the way that singular focus of North American cities, and especially North American suburbs. Okay, so one thing is obviously more cars, more pollution with the environment, like that's a huge thing that people talk about, right? So electric cars isn't popular until recently, and also even with that, you know, like the material used to do it and this and that. Like overall, if people are just walking and biking, it's always just gonna be better for the environment in that sense, right? I think that's pretty clear.
Yeah, that's
that
sort of
in
one of these
terms of
things.
pollution, right? Yeah. Other thing that's negative thing is that it's gonna be longer commute times. Like even with cars, to make it more convenient, it's still not as convenient just because of the way it's designed. It's still gonna be longer commute time for most people, and longer commute times is pretty bad for many aspects of people's lives and well-being, right? It's literally taking time away from maybe something as simple but important as sleep. It could be something as time spent with family and friends, and people are social creatures. Community is a huge thing, and when a place is designed for cars, where it kind of makes you drive, when it makes you have longer commute times, it takes away from that aspect of your life, right? And it's a higher cost of living, right? To own a car, right? You're talking about buying it, talking about interest on the mortgage, you're talking about maintenance costs, insurance costs is absolutely so ridiculous expensive in many places, and then there's unexpected repair costs nowadays with consumerism and people just wanting to buy things. You're probably gonna get gadgets and customizations for your cars and whatnot. Those are things that are probably gonna happen for a lot of people. So it's financially makes sense for a lot of people to not own cars, but with the way it's designed, with the way the culture is based on that after so many years, the society just isn't willing to not own a car like so many people. You literally have people who could live without a car, but they still want to own one and does own one anyway, right? So that's all those kind of negative aspect of car ownership and longer commute time and whatnot. But then you could talk about let's see, you talk about people's health, right? In other aspects, is literal physical health and also just mental health. Walking is
huge.
It's so good.
It's huge.
In terms of mental health and physical health, it's huge.
I know that.
So when
I know that there's I forget what it is. I forget the exact details, but literally just walking forwards, it does something to your cognition that really sets you up for success for the rest of the day, I suppose. I don't know if you get the same effect from a car. I don't know, because I know it has something to do with moving forwards, but I'm not entirely sure that the car gets the same effect. So I think,
and that's only one aspect, right?
That's only one. There's so many.
Cardiovascular health is literally one of the most important aspects of a person's well-being, right? And just walking all the time is huge for that. And when you look at the places where people are living healthily to very old ages, what do they call it? The blue zone or something like that? But those places, one of the common factors is people walk all the time, even at the old age. It's just something that people does. It's just a regular thing. So, and also, like I said, for mental health, right? It's very therapeutic for a lot of people to go on walks, to just take in fresh air, to just, be in your city and be interacting with the environment. It's huge, right? Let's see if I can think of anything off the top of my mind right now before I get into stuff that I personally don't like about it, but that isn't necessarily a problem or a negative thing about it. And also, if there's anything you can think of.
I'm trying to think. Let's see.
Well, we could just get into stuff that I personally don't like, and maybe you could talk about that too.
Yeah, sure.
But one of the things is obviously that I personally, I've said this. I don't know if I said it on here, but I say this all the time, including on the blog post. I feel more free, more independent, and more healthy when I can conveniently do basic day-to-day things. Right? When the city is designed, and when the urban planning is done in a way that allows me to live conveniently, the vibe of that kind of environment, of that design, is really nice too. It's cozy. It feels friendly. It feels, just a place that makes you actually want to be there, as opposed to like parking lots. Like why are parking lots are literally bigger than all the actual establishments, all the buildings, right? The street is absolutely huge, right? Huge intersections. I don't want to cross the road there. Like that's not a people friendly kind of design at all. Like I don't like it. Like I feel like a lot of people probably don't like it, and I think if studies are done, potentially that there is an aspect of mental health and the well-being in that sense. But I don't have the data for that. I don't have any theories on that. All I can say is that I personally don't like it, and I feel like a lot of people also don't like it. So I'm including it in this category as opposed to actual problems that's obviously associated with a high car usage. Just the way it makes me feel, and also the way it makes me feel being able to get everything done by walking, essentially, and also the environment that allows that also gives me kind of a very nice vibe, you know. So both of those factors are huge, like being able to do it and the way it's designed. Both of that just huge contribute massively to how I feel, right? And obviously, you want to be feeling your best, right?
Yeah, I'd have to agree with most of the stuff you just said there, because for me, when I think about this stuff, I think you already touched on like some of the bigger, I guess, blatant issues with the car-centric sort of planning we find ourselves with. But a lot of it is just, there's so many pros to the alternatives that I like so much, right? I guess I can't say I have much to add to what you just said, but I guess I'll play devil's advocate here. And I will say that the car-centric view, or I guess the car-centric model, I feel like it's definitely a lot more scalable, because I'm thinking about it, and it would be very difficult to make a city as big as, say, Manhattan's kind of in an island, so that could probably work out pretty well. Bad example, but a lot of bigger cities.
Manhattan's pretty walkable, bro.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you literally don't want to drive. You literally don't want to drive.
Bad
there.
example.
Like everyone takes a train or walk.
I'm thinking, unless there's what's a really bad city to walk in? Detroit, but that's bad to walk in for other reasons too. Trying to think here. Let's see. Just a lot of big cities. I don't know. Do you know if Tokyo is very walkable at all? But it is a massive city. You're not walking from one end to the other. That's for sure. But they have a really good public transportation. So
the thing is, Tokyo is really made up of so many smaller areas, right? And there's plenty of those neighborhoods that are very walkable.
Exactly.
And when you're getting between those places, they have very nice public transit, which is one of the points I want to get into when we talk about essential parts, the most important parts of urban planning, important things to have.
I guess nowadays, just to finish my point, I guess nowadays with technology, if you have the resources to, it's really not that big of an issue to make a more walkable city. I'm just thinking way back when, like I was thinking in a more historical mindset before you had all those infrastructures that you could use to supplement the cars with, before you had like bullet trains and all that jazz, or like more sophisticated bus systems, and those were yet to be developed. And then it was quite difficult to make big cities without making them really dependent on cars.
So a couple of things I want to talk about. One is that like other benefits of not being so car dependent is that less traffic. People hate traffic. Nobody likes traffic. public transit, something I want to get into, but just one thing I want to bring up now is literally more efficient for transporting people, because a lot of people get on it, right? When you're just going from one major area to the other, like that's a way to do it. There's like trains and various forms of trains, whether that's streetcars, whether that's subway, SkyTrain, bullet trains, actual trains, railway kind of style. Like all of those are just great for that purpose, right? And also less accidents, right? Less like I think I forget the exact stats, I forget exact thing, but like I think it's cardiovascular diseases and automobile accidents are like just leading cause for hospitalization or something like that. I forget. But like also most people will get into some sort of car accident. And when you're looking at numbers, when you're looking at statistics, you see, okay, oh my goodness, so many people get into car accidents every year. That's absolutely huge, right? Yeah. And for just people walking who like to walk when so car focused, like I said, those huge intersections, the single line that's supposed to be for bike lanes that's supposed to be sanctioned off and whatnot, and all these different aspects. Like it's just gonna be more accidents for all the drivers and also for the people who are walking, who are not even driving. It's just gonna be more accidents in general. So those are other benefits of a place being designed for more kind of people, for public transit base, for cycling, for just walkability, right? As opposed to being car centric, right? And the second thing I want to touch on is what you were saying. Made me think of another alternative that is good in many ways, and that is commie blocks, right? Like there are many things that's not good about them, but they literally have all the essentials in one particular area. Like it's literally walkable in a 5 to 10 minute range. Like it doesn't get more walkable than that, except for something that there's like actual like people who are in this field and actually doing urban planning, or at least theorizing about urban planning, something that certain cities are trying. I don't know too much about those kind of ideas and projects. I know some of them have had great success. I know some of them, in terms of actual design, seem really good. I don't know if those ones have, been done in real life. But like there are other things out there that are really good
concepts.
Yeah. But just commie block, that idea, like you can make adjustment to that and take all the benefits of it. And quite frankly, one thing that people don't like about the most about commie blocks is the design of the architecture. And that's a very easy fix. It's like the easiest fix. But the actual concept of how the whole thing works, having like school, kindergarten, grocery store, shops, parks, squares, and all kind of in the same kind of block, right?
Yeah, kind of like
it just makes sense.
Mini cities, I guess. Yeah.
That
makes sense.
You have a bunch of small mini cities essentially next to each other, and then all you have to do is buses and trains to get from one place to the other. And the people who are driving, very few, not many people actually need car to do things conveniently. And the people who want to, you could still have roads, right? You're still gonna have, you still gotta need roads to some capacity, but. Another thing I really like about it, that isn't related to this specifically, but it is definitely related to urban planning, is that they have free workout equipment outdoors, right? That's what you have in a lot of, post-Soviet countries, a lot of communist countries or ex-communist countries, or countries that kind of stolen the idea, right? Like you literally have all these workout equipments outdoors for free.
Yeah, there's a reason why there's so many Russian calisthenics athletes, man. Like it's mad. They're always feeling some crazy stuff, and it's like, how there's so many.
Once again,
makes sense.
Once again, induced demand. And that's where I'm going to transition to the next point. And one of the things I think is the most important in terms of urban planning is public transit, right? So whole idea is induced demand, right? You create something and people will use it if it's designed well, right?
Yeah.
So if you're going to have a train that's affordable, that comes, pretty frequently, getting people from one major location to another major location, people are going to use that. They're going to see, okay, you know what, instead of paying all that money for the car, I could just use this to get to work, right? It's actually quicker because I'm not stuck in traffic. It's cheaper, and actually, this is just a preferred way of doing it, and you see this all the time in a lot of cities. And if people just thought about it more and actually implemented that, that's a huge fix to the car dependency issue. But overall, it's just a very important thing for urban planning, right? Because you're going to have youth who can't drive it, who don't have money to drive, who literally isn't allowed legally to drive because of their age. You're going to have elderly people. You're going to have financially not so well off people, right? You're going to have all these different groups of people who will really benefit from using public transit. So that's just important to have, even without looking at the car usage situation, right?
Yeah.
So it's literally so important, and we both used a lot of public transit, and still do, right? Mm-hmm. So obviously, like, it's important. I don't know if there's anything you want to touch in terms of that.
Public transport, specifically.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's just really good. If your city has bad public transport, move out. That's all I can say. That easy.
That easy. But yeah, in terms of public transit, I think the most important thing is having, streetcars where just some form of train is just massive, but also public buses is huge. Mm-hmm. There's no doubt about that. Even smaller buses make sense for a lot of communities because there aren't that many people, right? There aren't that many people needing to do, to go from this place to that place, whatever the reason is. But public transport in terms of buses is also huge. But in terms of now, I feel like trains are probably bigger because a lot of people are getting from one residential area to the center, or one residential area to a different residential area. Mm-hmm. And having something like trains, like streetcars or trams, right? Some of my favorite places have them, and they have them in Australia, right? Melbourne, right? Mm-hmm. They have it, in so many places. In fact, it was very popular before until a lot of places started going more towards car-centric, and they actually took away that whole system. Kind of unfortunate. But that also sets the tone for the rest of your urban planning, right? Because it allows you from one area to another. It allows you to have these areas where people can do stuff, right? You allow well-designed suburbs where people could still be, convenient there, but also convenient getting to the locations that they need to do other stuff, right? So that's a very important starting point in terms of urban planning. And the next thing, because I don't think you have anything to add, is housing, is zoning, right? Across the world, housing prices keep going up, mm-hmm. and a lot of places have serious crisis. in terms of that, you have a lot of people who have the money to rent, but they literally have to be on the call. Like literally, once you see it posted, you gotta call them, and then you're looking. Sometimes you're not even looking at the place because so many people want it. Like the demand is huge in so many places, and obviously with people actually buying homes, the prices are ridiculous in so many places. It's literally not affordable, and parts of that comes from the urban planning, the zoning laws, the kind of philosophy behind housing, right? You could have a housing project that's designed to be essentially rented out to people by the government. You could have zoning laws that allowed I forget the term for it, but one of the reasons Vancouver has a housing problem is that you're only allowed basically single family homes in one area, and then the other area you're only allowed high-rise apartments. There's no mid-level stuff you see in most of Europe. They don't have tall buildings, right? You have a lot of just a few story tall apartment buildings. You have those homes right next to each other, very, very much the old school New York style almost, right? You see those, but like those, you can't build those. You also can't build those few story tall apartment buildings. There's a lot of stuff that you're just not able to build, right?
Yeah, no.
And with a lot of those apartment buildings as well, on the ground floor, you could have businesses like grocery stores, cafes, restaurants, and whatnot that makes it more convenient for the people living in the area, right? But because that's not allowed, you obviously can't have it in a single-family home. And if you have a tall, high-rise building, you're probably not going to have that either, right? You're going to have a lobby instead, and that's it, right? So in various ways, it's kind of really limiting people and driving up the price, right? Single family homes, not that effective, right? Literally for the land, like obviously there's a place for that to exist, but in more steady areas, you definitely want something that could, house more people.
Yeah, a little bit more compact.
But it's
not the most efficient.
Yeah, but at the same time, a lot of people don't like high rises, right? And also, you can't just keep building a bunch of high rises, and that also just doesn't work. And with that, if it's car dependent, even the parking is going to be a problem. And the parking is a problem. That's the other thing about car dependency. Parking is such a big problem.
My gosh, yeah.
It sucks.
It does.
Right, you going into Vancouver. A lot of people literally park in the casino in Richmond, and take the SkyTrain.
Yeah, because it's so bad. It's so hard to find a spot sometimes.
You just feel you're willing to pay. Yeah. You're willing to pay like ridiculous overpriced prices, and then still can't find a place anyway.
It's not.
Yeah. And also just the traffic of that sucks, right? But in terms of housing, going back to the main focus here, different philosophy, different zoning laws can really help a lot more people afford to actually live, in the city or in the urban space, or even in suburbs that are connected, right? Because so many suburbs here, the problem I don't like about it is that you need a car to connect to other places. Right?
Yeah,
you need a car to even do basic things like going to the gym or buying groceries, because they're not going to have shops like that, right? Because it's literally all residential. So minor tweaks in the urban planning can literally solve those problems. How hard is it to have a few places in each residential area that's walkable in a very conveniently walkable distance, that has basic things like grocery shopping and whatnot? That's not that hard, right? How hard is it to introduce this part might be difficult based on the way it's planned now. But if you're going to plan it differently, it's not that hard to do it. But just connecting from one residential area to another residential area is the biggest thing we're not seeing in North America. Because from the residential area to the city, in many places it's not that bad. In other places it is. But from one residential area to another residential area, which a lot of people, are doing, right? Visiting family, friends, even for other purposes, like that's something you just end up doing, and needing to drive to do that is something that definitely induces a lot of car usage.
I think the grocery store one, or the example of grocery stores and whatnot, I feel like that's really going to work out in cities that already have kind of like that car-centric thing going on. Might be because just looking at it, like let's say I'm the CEO of like Walmart or whatever, right? Would I want to lease out 2 different stores to service the same amount of people, where I could just make one in one spot where people would have to drive to it, but would service more? So I feel like that sort of consumerism comes. It's not even. I don't know if I'd call that consumerism, because that's a little bit different. I don't know. I'm sure there's a term for that sort of thinking. But I feel like it's just another example of how dominant cars have become. Because from a financial point of view, it doesn't make no sense to me to have like those sort of walkable grocery stores. Even though it sounds really nice, I would love that. From a financial point of view, with cars being a thing in North America and then being so normalized, unless people start driving less and it just becomes more of a draw for people to come to a grocery store because it is walkable, because it is in that location, because it is convenient, then I don't see. It just seems very difficult for places to adopt that model, though it sounds very nice.
Yeah, but like you look at places that have that, and like many European cities, you have first of all, you have smaller grocery store chains, right? Like they aren't as big as Walmart. Right?
Oh yeah,
there's something more like, I don't know, thrifties.
Yeah,
right. Something just a bit smaller.
Those
like
typically
that.
also have higher prices, though. So a lot of times you'll see people, even if, for example, thrifties and superstore near our place or near our area is, they're pretty close by. They're literally within walking distance of each other, both of them, along with Walmart right there too. A lot of times, even though thrifties is a perfectly serviceable grocery store, people will just go to superstore or Walmart because they have better prices, and they're just, I don't know, more scaled. Granted, thrifties is also, I think, local to BC, right?
I'm not too sure exactly,
but
there's something about it that actually makes sense for the prices to be higher. But also, like, they have those other store there. Like, if they have only that store in the area, a lot of people are still just, first of all, even with those store there, they're still in business all these years, and a lot of people still shop there, right? So first of all, let's get that straight. Secondly, if there's only that store in an area and it is walkable, plenty of people would just go there instead of that. And also, like I said, there's a reason why it's higher price. It's not just because it's smaller, right?
Oh yeah, no.
And also, I was thinking there could just be more local actual grocery store. You see Kins Farm, or like the like just smaller actual, like people probably don't know the stores I'm talking about, but like just think about actual grocery store instead of actual chains, right? Just a place where they sell vegetables and some basic like condiments and stuff like that. Dry pasta, just basic stuff like that.
Yeah, not like big
way smaller, more local. Yeah. So not supermarkets like thrifties, and not big supermarkets like Walmart. Like there's no way you could have like Walmart and all these places and walkable and make sense for them financially. With like places more like thrifties, but not so bougie, right? Those do work in many places in Europe, right? Do you see that in like the actual cities a lot, even when they're smaller cities? The actual suburbs, I'm not too sure. And also, it really depends on the city, the country and whatnot. It's going to be different. But overall, there's going to be a store that's walkable to you that sells basic food stuffs, right? Yeah. So that idea and that thing does exist in so many places and so doable, right? Like that part, I don't think it's hard to adopt. And I think that is also something that is essential in terms of urban planning, right? It shouldn't be that hard for people to get food. Right? Honestly, come on, guys. Other thing we've touched on is public spaces like squares, parks, gardens, beaches, if that's available to the city. Like having public space like that is huge for urban planning for communities. You gotta have a place where people can be and just hang out and just chill and meet up, right? And on the same line with that, having community centers where they provide the facilities, the equipment, the classes for sports, recreation, and art is also just huge, right? That's kind of how you have people develop hobbies, other place for people to get together, hang out, and just bond, right? Like one of the things you see in a lot of small towns or suburbs, not like well off suburbs, right? In North America, is to have a lot of people who just doesn't have anything to do or anywhere to be, and they just end up, just partying all the time, or getting to drugs or alcohol addictions, where they just do dumb stuff, like literally, like just dumb stuff that end up hurting themselves. Just go in the backyard and try some dumb stuff. There are plenty of dumb stuff that could hurt yourself, and you can still do those things even in a nice.
It's cutting out a lot. It's cutting out a lot, so I have some trouble following there because it went from like suburbs to like people doing dumb stuff. Hold on. Repeat that last bit, man. Because it was cutting out.
I was saying.
So he's like, "Whoa, hold on, one jump at a time. Hold on."
No, I was just talking about how in like North America there are people from small towns and not so well off suburbs that end up not having anything to do or anywhere to be, and they just end up getting themselves into trouble, into personal problems, stuff like alcohol and drug addiction, a lot of like the negative side of the party culture that exists. You have just people who go into their backyard and do dumb stuff that end up hurting themselves, because that's actually probably a better alternative to other things that are available to them. But just having community spaces like all those public spaces I talked about, and also the community centers that offers the facilities and classes and all of that for people, I think those are huge parts of urban planning. And on the same kind of wavelength is libraries, right? You're going to have a place for people to read, to study, to get information, right? To have access to that is huge. Some people don't even have access to internet nowadays, which is actually becoming more and more rare, and that's good. But public libraries solve that as well. It's just a huge thing to have.
Absolutely, 100%. I'd be interested to see if anyone's ever done any sort of research on that sort of stuff.
There are definitely papers on this. I just haven't read them.
Yeah, but I imagine it's one of those things that's probably very, very difficult to isolate. Yeah, but I'm actually quite interested. I'm gonna hop on PsycInfo after this one and see if I can find anything, because that's pretty good. That's an interesting thought. Never thought of that.
Yeah, I don't know if you have anything else. I mean, obviously with urban planning, you're gonna have like one of the problems we have in our neighborhood. Neighborhood back home. I'm in London right now, but our neighborhood is that they designed the place to have a lot of new people moving in. Yeah. But then like the schools and whatnot, just like, this will be enough. Like, what are you thinking? Like the math literally doesn't work out. You knew years and years in advance that you're going to have so many people moving into the area. How do you not have elementary school and high school planned that actually facilitates that population? Do you think everyone moving in are just not going to have kids? Like what's the big idea? Bro, how do you not know? Like that is a huge part of urban planning as well. Just knowing the basic things that people need and making sure that you have enough of that for the population, right? So school is a huge thing. Having actual, public schools of different levels in the community, right? So that's a huge part of urban planning that cannot be overlooked.
100%. Yeah. It's just, I can't believe it.
Right?
Like the portables aren't going to solve the problem, my guy.
They just build more portables.
Build more portables,
bro, what?
If anybody who is unfamiliar with what a portable is, it's when the school needs an extra classroom, but they don't have enough building for it. So they just make a temporary sort of room just outside of the school. Call that the portable, and then boom, new classroom.
And then they become permanent instead of temporary. Like they're literally designed to be temporary and whatnot, but nope, still there. Honestly, man, they gotta fix that in our neighborhood, and
they do.
Places all around gotta think about that when they're doing their urban planning for sure. And other thing is like the roads, right? But that's a point I already touched on. But just better road design with bus. With like bus lanes, bike lanes, with narrowing of roads, proper traffic lights, crosswalks, and so all the different aspects, right? When you widen the road and have an extra lane, that's momentary solution to traffic problems, right? Studies have shown that in a year or 2 or 3, like just a few years span, it's inducing demand once again, right? There's just gonna be more people driving there anyways, and the problem exists once again. The traffic is gonna be bad again. Georgie, who has been on this podcast, who lives in our area as well, he picked me up at my parents' restaurant, which is also in the area. It's not far away at all. It took him 15 minutes to drive from his house to the restaurant. It should be within 5 minutes. His house.
Where's his house?
Which is on my road.
It's on your road.
160. Yeah, it's on my road.
Okay, bro. Yeah. Okay. I see.
Yeah, like that's a 5-minute drive.
It should be
like easily 5 minutes. That's what it should be. But no,
15 minutes.
Yeah,
that's mad.
He's like, it took me 50 minutes to get here because how bad the traffic is. I'm like, bro. And the solution that they tried is extra lane, easy, man. That's all we need, right?
Yeah, extra lane.
Nah, come on. How do you have a road that busy and only have like one? Well, I guess technically 2 buses on that road now, but they come like every 30 minutes still, and there's only 2 buses trying to address all this population and business and like going from one major area to another because. You keep going down that road, you're in Langley. You keep going down this road, you're going to be like, White Rock or turning onto the highway, right? So those are areas to be as well. Like it just makes sense in certain ways to have, more buses, more frequent buses, and just better routes and whatnot. Just in terms of designing the road, designing public transit, a lot of like these things are just huge for a urban space to function properly and efficiently and have it be enjoyable for the people who's actually living there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, anybody who's ever played a city building game will know exactly how important urban planning is, man. Let me tell you.
Mm-hmm.
All these little things we're talking about, I'm just getting flashbacks to this one game I was playing a couple weeks ago, Nebuchadnezzar. Trying to set it up so that the city could function just properly. It was such a challenge, man. Oh my gosh. And then you're looking at the things like, for example, your issue with the buses. That's like, it's just these little problems, man. People don't think about them nowadays. A lot of people don't think about them nowadays in a day-to-day life when things go right. Yep. When it's planned well, people kind of take it for granted sometimes. It's only when you realize how AIDS it is to take a bus from your house to somewhere else that you're like, okay, well, never mind. Maybe we could do a little bit better in the urban planning section or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, dude, our area, Surrey City of Parks.
it's not
Well, in
bad.
our neighborhood, there aren't that many of parks. In other parts of
Oh yeah,
Surrey,
no,
yeah,
yeah, South Shore, yeah.
but like, well, South Surrey in general, yeah, but in our specific neighborhood, just like within walking distance
There's
of us,
not.
there
There's
aren't
really
that
not.
many
No.
parks. Like there are very few, and they're all very small as well. And you have a lot of people who are active, right? That's
Hmm.
kind of a trait of a lot of people in the area. You have a lot of people who are pet owners, right? They go for walks with their pets, and you have a lot of kids who are gonna go out, hang out, play, and even have training for sports and whatnot. Like it just makes sense to have like parks, and like once again, they knew they were developing this area years and years ahead. Like in the city of parks, where other places have so many parks, like this particular neighborhood are not gonna have that many. Come on,
Yeah, no, it's
come
like
on.
off the top of my head, I mean, it's mostly you got a couple playgrounds, you got some
Hmm.
sports fields, but beyond that, most of the
You ha-
parks that are actually like parks are like kind of in the coastal area, like Mud Bay Park or whatever, or Black Spit or
mhm.
something like that. And unless you're living right there in like Crescent or whatever,
Hmm.
or unless you're willing to go drive to one of these parks, then there's not really
Yeah.
any like decent park that I'd want to go to off the top of my head that I can walk to.
Hmm.
It's just there's nothing around here for that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are all part of urban planning.
Mm-hmm.
Those are all things that could really elevate a person's quality of life, the enjoyment of their day to day existence, right? And they're all things that when it comes down to it, could actually have a huge impact on a person's life, because those are places where you meet people, you hang out with people, you develop relationships and bonds, and like I said, the environment, is a huge aspect of a person's
Mm-hmm.
life. And I give an example of how things could negatively affect you, like I've said, with the small towns and all that, and the problems that you see there, the statistically, right? You see a lot of people saying that they don't want to be a statistic, right? Because they know that people from where they're from, the people with the background they have and whatnot, right? But urban planning is a way that kind of solves a lot of those problems, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you literally kind of design places for people to feel well, to do well, setting up for success, to have options, right? Have opportunities, possibilities, right? Like it's actually incredibly important. Like I can't stress how important it is for people to just walk regularly. Like even if you have stuff to do uh, in a different part of town, and the public transportation and whatnot doesn't allow you to like basically have to drive, right, to live conveniently.
Mm-hmm.
Like even in your free time, like
Do some walking.
hopefully, yeah, do
Yeah.
some walking. Hopefully the environment, the urban planning in your area is nice enough that walking is actually really enjoyable. But like honestly, man, walking is so important that even if it's not, and also like if you're driving all the time, might as well drive to a nice place to go for a walk,
Mm-hmm.
right? If that is your situation, but walking is so important, and I would really like it if places are designed that focus more on people and walkability, and that is just a more natural thing for people to do and default into, right? As opposed to defaulting into just driving,
Mm-hmm.
even for a couple of blocks, right? But yeah, walking is just so important.
Yeah,
It's
it's super
not
important.
directly related to this, but because we're talking so much about well-being and all of that, like walking is
Yeah.
huge.
For walking,
Uh,
even like I feel like I like walking so much, and I just feel like it's such an important part of my day sometimes
mhm,
that I'll literally get off the bus early because the bus
mhm.
passes right in front of where I work. But I'll get off like a couple stops early and I'll walk for like 20, 30 minutes to work instead.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I mean, we've been on plenty of walks. Like we've been on walks in our
Yeah.
neighborhood quite a bit. Even in the beginning of COVID, we did that quite.
Oh yeah,
Like,
yeah. Good
like that
times.
was, yeah. And we've also walked to places instead of taking the bus, even though it's like an hour away. Sometimes,
walk to
like
the beach.
we've done
Probably.
that multiple
Yeah.
times. Walk to the beach, walk to the field instead of taking the bus to the field. Back when we played soccer frequently, walked to just I don't even know, walked all over Vancouver. Instead of taking a bus that gets you there for in a few minutes, you walk all the way down the road for 15-20 minutes instead. Like that's a very walkable distance. But when you're walking around the city the entire time, it does add up. And some people like to just take the shortcut and take the bus. But we've done a lot of walking together, and we both obviously really enjoy it. And we know that scientifically speaking, and statistically speaking, and anecdotally speaking, walking is just so good for health, your overall well-being, and just kind of how you feel right in life. Like, so just so many benefits from such a basic thing that gets overlooked. Like, come on, please.
Yeah, that's one of my pet peeves, man. Because there's some people out there who they despise walking. You tell them it's a 20-minute walk, and they're like, "What? Nah, bro, let's take the bus." Nah, bro, like, yo. It's only a 20-minute walk, bro. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
You have somewhere to be? Like, I don't get it, man. Good Lord. And if that's a challenge for you,
take the time to enjoy something.
Yeah, exactly.
If you, oh my goodness. If that is an actual exercise for you, then you got to start just walking more.
Yeah, exactly. That should be an indicator that you need to start walking.
Yeah. That shouldn't be like a real exercise. That should be a very passive and chill.
That's quite rare. I haven't met that many people who legitimately can't walk because they're that out of shape. But man, like, for example, my sister, she just works up the road or whatever. And sometimes before I go to work, I'll sometimes get a ride from my parents. But man, I remember I used to get so cheesed at this because sometimes we'd almost be late because they'd insist on dropping off my sister, even though she literally works a 10-minute walk away versus I literally can't walk there. It's separated by a highway. Once again, you can't get from one city to the another urban planning RIP. So I need an automobile vehicle to get over there. She couldn't stomach the 10-minute walk, bro. I'm never gonna let her down, man. Every time I'm like, yo, it's an easy walk. It's an easy walk. But yeah.
Oh, speaking of that, man, I remember back when I was in Italy, right? I literally take the train to a different city, from one city to another, get off. I could just get around that city fine, right? Like you could get from one place to another from one convenient transport, which is probably quicker than driving anyways, right? It's not that expensive. And I think if you're actually like, there are probably discounts too as well, depending, but... Yeah, but either way, even when I was there taking a one-way trip like that, it wasn't expensive, right? I'm sure there are other kind of plans. I don't know if it's for locals, it's for frequent travelers, or for like whatever it is. But I'm sure there are other kind of plans out there that's even cheaper.
And no matter how expensive it is, I'm sure it's going to be much cheaper than buying a car, paying for the insurance, paying for the repair, paying for the gas, if it's not electric. Yeah. So, I mean, if you have a good infrastructure, like a good train system or a really good bus system, it makes a lot of sense to just use that over a car. People literally
take the train every single day to get to work in multiple countries, like all over Europe, all over Asia. Like that's not a rare thing. A lot of people live in one city. They hop on the train maybe for 30 minutes, maybe for even longer, and they get to a different city and they go to work, right? And like that's cheaper than driving, right? You're not actually driving, so you could be doing other things like reading, more active stuff, right? In the car, the most you can do is just listen to stuff, podcast, music, and that's it, right? But over there, you could you could be playing cards with your colleagues for if that's what you want. Like there's a lot that you could be doing. And also, like I said, it's just financially speaking, it just makes sense. And having that connection for the people who literally can't afford it is so good, right? And the thing is, like, you have a place like Russia with plenty of small, provincial towns that's financially speaking just awful, right? But it's such a large country with so many like small places like that, right? And everything just connected by rail still. But like over here in North America, nobody takes a railway.
Yeah, no.
It doesn't. It's not like, come on, like, what are we doing?
It's just not one of the modes of transport that you consider. Like, you just don't consider, oh, I'm going to take a train to this place. I'm going to take a train here. It's just not a thing. I mean, you have some cities have SkyTrain systems or subway systems or whatnot, but that's not the same.
Subways, yeah.
It's not quite the same as like a proper like inter-cities, I guess, train.
There's a railway out here that's actually used out east here. That's not. Well, it's pretty bad. Okay, it's actually terrible, but it's still actually used, and it does connect all the big, cities, and it's not that expensive. So in many ways, it's still like way better than nothing. But at the same time, in comparison to all these other places, it's terrible, and a lot of people, they don't want to be driving like on the highway here. The traffic's bad a lot of the times. Like, if it was better designed, right? If it's more convenient, or if it was, I don't know, more affordable, quicker, or something, like there's different things that could be done to make it just a better service. There's definitely a demand for it, right? You just have to actually provide a good enough product that people are incentivized to take that alternative instead of driving, especially in a culture where driving and car usage is so much of a default, right? But like, you could literally take the train all over Europe and then all over Asia from there, Like you could literally go all the way from London to across entire Europe, go take the Trans-Siberian thing, go all the way down to, I don't know, Vladivostok, and then like, I don't know, go like take a ferry ride to Japan and take the train over Japan. Maybe you could just hop into China and take the railway over China. Like, there's so many things you could do just getting on the train, right?
Yeah,
because everything is connected like that. But here, like, it's so car centric that no way, right?
Nothing.
But
on
just
that scale
having
or level exists at all. Yeah.
Like, here, it's a luxury and it's a slow ride, and people do it for the experience and the view.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
It's not used for like
the
transit function. Yeah, it's not practical. Like, that's
the practical aspect is the selling point. It's not its main attraction. Yeah.
Yeah. But it totally could be shifted like that if people wanted to. But there's a lot of people who want, like Canada. Other problem, one of the first episodes we did was the biggest problem was in Canada, and one of the things that I don't know if we said or not, but it's like Canada is pretty much in hubs, right?
Pardon?
Like, it's not, Canada is very much in kind of hubs. It's kind of like one kind of concentration here, one concentration there.
Yeah.
It's not very well spread out. They're all pretty close to the border, sure, but overall you have one major urban area and then the next, and to connect between them, it's either hours and hours and hours to drive, maybe a train ride that's also hours long and doesn't really make sense, or it's a plane ride, right? Like, it's so not well connected. So even talking about, both talking about more of a national scale and continental scale, even, or talking about more like actual city and urban scale, right? Place from one place to the other just not well connected. And in terms of urban planning, that's a major failure, is it not? Like even if you want the place to still be like car centric, I'm just curious, there's still much better.
Do you know what the underlying causes behind that is at all in Canada? Because I'm assuming a lot of it is that it's so concentrated on the border. And I feel like that probably has something to do with it. Because if you look in the States where it might be a little bit better connected, I'm assuming you might consider the States a bit better connected than Canada, right? Quite a bit.
Overall, I would say it's better connected.
Yeah,
in
I feel like a lot of it's because it's just so spread out over
the
continental.
highway system is better.
The highway system, right? But here it's like,
and they
you
have
get from
buses,
one spot to
like,
another, it's going to be just a straight line. That's kind of like your only option. Versus over there, you can just go in all directions, and there's cities all around you, whether you go north, south, east, west, all that jazz, unless you're obviously by the coast or by the border. So, because I'm just thinking, like, Canada is just so long, right? It's just so wide.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you get around
Chile.
that, right? Like, unless you just make the highways faster somehow, or you just make the trains faster somehow. Just don't see how that particular issue here in Canada.
Well, the thing is, you could make the train very fast.
Okay, yeah,
that's doable, right?
Yeah.
And just because how big Canada is geographically and how small the population is, and how much people are already in the car-centric culture, like culturally speaking, how is the society is like where car usage is the default, right?
Yeah.
Because of all these factors, like there really isn't any reason for Canada to introduce a major project that would connect all these things and spend all that much money on it. Like, it literally doesn't make sense. So on that, I don't blame them at all. Like, yes, you could actually make a high-speed railway across entire Canada and connect between places. Like, that's definitely doable, right? That's actually like a realistic thing, a plausible thing to do. But there's no reason for that based on all these factors. But between like within the hubs, within the actual smaller urban scale, there absolutely does make sense for many places to introduce some form of public transit that conveniently connects one residential area to another residential area, from one kind of city center to another city center. Just connect these areas like that. Like it should be much more of a branch than a singular line. Whereas now, what we have so much of it is kind of a singular line, right? You just want to see it branched out into these residential areas, into these suburbs, and into these other city centers, right? So with Vancouver, for example, it is expanding, right? It has expanded as well.
Yeah.
But, from South Surrey to Vancouver, there's still no like SkyTrain. You have to go to Surrey or Richmond to get on the SkyTrain to do something like that, right? You want to go to Langley, you basically have to drive. Or you could take like one bus from our area that goes there. All right. I don't know. Like, it's expanded into Coquitlam, right? Like, that's already functional. That's already in use. Okay.
I think so.
But they're expanding it even more.
I believe so. Yeah,
I
think they just had.
Yeah.
I don't know if they've started. I don't think they've started construction on it, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're going to expand it.
And there's also something to do. There is also something that connects to UBC apparently, either in the works or being discussed. I forget.
For the SkyTrain,
I don't know if that's a thing.
I mean, right now there's nothing, but as far as I know,
yeah.
But there's a lot of buses. That's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of buses there. But the thing is, like, it makes sense for there to be a SkyTrain. You have a giant residential area there. You have one of the biggest universities also there. You have beaches in the university campus that's there that people go to. And then you also have, on the way there, you have places like Kitsilano where people actually like to be, and also people live there, right? And just connect all these things together, right? It just makes sense in so many ways.
Yeah. That's a good spot.
So you just want to see the public transit lines to be like major branches instead of singular lines or a few lines, right? You want to see a branch and connect between all these centers and these communities. That's a huge thing about urban planning that would solve a lot of issues here and would be like one of the fixes to being so car centric. the other ones we talked about is actually having stuff within walking distance instead of zoning laws or whatever's not allowing that. But public transit is one of the biggest things in terms of that. And that will certainly help what you were talking about with your problem of literally needing, right? Because you can't just cross the highway by yourself like that.
I've thought about it. I've thought about it many times. Like, yo, what if I just leave super early and I just start a little jog? But no, that does not seem like a smart idea. So I'm gonna refrain from doing that.
There's one last thing I want to talk about in terms of this that really ties everything together, I feel like, and that is something that people probably don't think a lot about, because a lot of people here think that in the suburbs, right? They think it's like a great place to raise a family and whatnot. Like they'll say these things that they don't like about it, but then they'll also kind of go back to it's like a really nice place to raise a family and it's suitable for that. But I would like to say that so many of the problems, I guess depends on how you want to raise your kids. That's always kind of a thing. But having grown up here, and you too, in kind of the suburbs, right, in Canadian suburb, in the Greater Vancouver area, one thing that you'll know is that you are dependent on your parents to drive you to places, right? A lot of time public transit is just not convenient, and once again things are just not in a conveniently walkable distance oftentimes, and also unless you get your license right away at 16 and have a car at 16, you're gonna rely on your parents even longer. So the earliest you could stop relying on them for that is like 16. So that's a long time. All right. That's a very long time. I just rely on parents for all your activities and whatnot. And most people, unless they live right next to the school, they can't even walk to school. You think that's something that's very basic. You see kids in other countries, 6 years old. You see little 6-year-olds walking together, biking together to school.
Yeah, here it's weird
without
seeing
a parent.
I remember just a couple of days ago, I was seeing some elementary school kids, like pretty much any kid elementary school age, if they're walking home by themselves, I'm like, what are parents at, man? That's sus. Because that's just kind of how it is here. It's, but in other parts of the world, it's perfectly normal to see that kind of stuff, I guess.
Yeah. And Canada is actually safer in some of the other places, right? But because of where the culture is here, because of car dependency here, people, they have to drop their kids off at school because they can't walk. They literally can't walk there. Public transit a lot of time isn't convenient enough, like I said. Other times, people just for some reason, culturally speaking, once again, so many years of this. Right in the beginning, we talk about how this developed. So it has been decades and decades of this, of car dependency, right? That's so ingrained and such a default that people are, they don't think that public transit is a solution to that. They think they just have to pick them up and drop them off and be like a stay-home parent, right? Be kind of the soccer mom trope. Right, and you see that like it's a real character that exists in this society here, right? Because all the activities your kids do, going to practice, going to friend's house, going to school, right?
Yeah, you need a car for it.
All these basic things, you pick them up, you drop them off, you do all these things, and that's gonna take all of your time, and that also so both. The kid needs to depend on you for all these things. And you, instead of, working or doing your hobbies, focusing on yourself, so many people, self-care goes out the window once you become a parent because so much you have to do because of the car dependency, right? Like I said, instead of working, instead of your hobbies, instead of taking care of yourself, instead of spending time with your friends, instead of focusing on a relationship with your spouse or whatnot, and all of those, you're constantly needing to just drive your child, right? So both your child is going to be extremely dependent on you, which in many ways isn't really good for their development. And secondly, it restricts their freedom a lot. They really shouldn't depend on you, especially in their teen years. Like if you say that they're too young, whatever, okay, fine. You want to drop them off. Like first of all, if it's walkable, you can walk your child to school. You can walk them to these places too, right? So that doesn't stop you from parenting the way you want to. That doesn't stop you from that, right? It just gives the child the option of being able to do all these things at a much younger age, allowing them to have this freedom, interaction with people, with community, with the environment, that's going to help their growth a lot, in many people's opinion, including mine. And if you want to raise your child that way, or if you want your child to have that option, if you think that's fitting for them, because every child is different, every parent's different, that option should exist. And walkability, the urban planning, is what facilitates that. And secondly, people want to focus on their career. They want to do their hobbies. They want to do all these things. They don't necessarily want to have all of that responsibility as a parent. A lot of people don't feel like they should have all that responsibility as a parent, because you have so much responsibility as a parent as it is, right? Like, why should you have to drop your kids off, pick them up all the time, and have that essentially be the majority of your life, when if urban planning done in various ways will allow you to, work and all the things I've already mentioned. I don't need to repeat myself there again, right? So for both the child and the parent, the North American suburbs leaves many restrictions, right? And it's so accepted, and people think it's it's good, right? Like that type of sheltering and dependency and whatnot. Like it's not good. It's not.
It's not particularly beneficial.
It just restricts both parties, both the child and the parent, in many ways. And for a lot of people, it's not necessarily what they want. And if they actually just took the time and thought about it and and learn about the alternatives, right? They'll maybe come to the same conclusion that Not Just Bikes YouTube channel guy did, and moved to a place like Netherlands where that is possible, right? Like in China, I remember walking to school by myself. I remember walking there with my parents. I remember walking there with my grandma. I remember walking there with fellow classmates. I remember all of those things. And I was very young. I was like in first grade there, right? I started second grade there, right? So I was literally 7 or 8 years old, right? It's normal for kids like 6 and whatnot, riding their bikes, walking to school, taking public transit to school in like Nordic countries, in Netherlands, and other places, right? You see that all the time. You see kids, teenagers taking the train to another city to watch your favorite football team play. You see people taking the train to other cities to watch a concert, right? They're not relying on their parents for all of these things. They could make their plans and organize these things with their peers and do these things independently, right? And all of that possibility and option is taken from them because of this urban planning, right?
Absolutely, 100% agree. Yeah, I remember, because just talking about the school example, I remember 2 things, actually. I remember both walking to school, because I was very lucky in elementary school here in Canada, where it was literally within walking distance. But I also remember my mom picking me up in a car when it was literally just a 5-minute walk. But then in Colombia, where I think Medellin, it expanded so much. We were living in an apartment, and the school that I went to was like a private school. Don't know how old it was, but I reckon the building that we were in was new-ish. It was literally in a mountain somewhere. Not a mountain. It was like a big mountain. It was like one of those. It was kind of like further away from the city, and like you just had to use a bus. I don't know why they put a school there. It makes very little sense to me now that I think about it, but it's a nice looking spot for it, I guess. But you had to take the school bus there or have your parents drive you there. Yeah, no, just
I mean, if you have actual
excerpt there.
if you have actual school buses, it's not bad, right?
Oh yeah,
That's
no,
a
it's not too
solution.
bad.
Right. If you're picking them up in like the neighborhoods, right, it makes sense. Like
Yeah.
that's not a bad solution at all. That's literally providing a very reasonable solution and offering the public transport to support what you're
I
building,
guess
right?
I guess the point is it was impossible to walk there, and I mean it was a private school, so they offered that
Yeah.
bus or whatever. But for example, my elementary school, I don't think we had buses for elementary school. I could be crazy though. I could be tripping. I might just not remember it.
In Richmond?
Yeah, it's in Richmond. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just don't remember ever seeing the school bus. I don't know, but it's so long ago that I probably just forgot. I reckon they probably did have a school bus, and I just forgetting. But yeah.
See, for most of elementary school, I was living in walkable distance from my elementary school, but there was a major intersection, King George and 152nd, one of the biggest intersections in our area, right? And so, like when that's the situation, even in a walkable distance, it doesn't really make sense for the child to walk to school by themselves.
Yeah, nah, no, thank you.
Yeah, exactly. So
that's a nasty intersection. That one's big.
As you get older, right, and also you kind of have to learn to cross the street at some point by yourself with confidence. There's a difference between knowing how to cross the street, between crossing the street, between really knowing how to cross the street, and being able to just doing it by yourself confidently and safely. Right.
I was thinking about
there are differences between those things.
Like I was thinking about it. It wasn't until like early high school, mid high school that I started becoming comfortable walking outside by myself, going to places where I needed to go by myself, right? And I think in more walkable cities,
largely due to urban planning.
Exactly, due to urban planning. With better urban planning, that could have been done when I was much younger, right? So
and you have to think about so I talk about the child and the parent and the suburbs that's not walkable and the problems you have, right? But for elderly people as well, some people either too old to drive or whatever, but like crossing those intersections as an elderly person is not comfortable either, right? Especially with the number going down and you're much slower, like that's not a comfortable situation. Yeah.
Oh man! Since you've seen that thing count down and you're only halfway through, you're like, yikes. I'd imagine. And
that brings me to another point here is that I remember an anecdote my English 12 summer school teacher said, and I've actually brought up this guy multiple times on this podcast. He's a pretty interesting guy overall. I'll probably bring him up again at some point. But this anecdote, I'm pretty sure was from him, was that he saw in Surrey somewhere, he would always see, I actually don't know if it's from him. It might be from a different guy, but I think it's him. But yeah, he sees elderly Indian people who just have trouble crossing the street because they probably came, like his guess was they probably came way later after their children immigrated here or something like that. And obviously India first of all is going to be very different regions and whatnot, very diverse place. So but no matter what, it's going to be very different than like Surrey, than like Canada, and the intersections are also going to be very different with the cars and all that. And you just have, you have some elderly Indian dude waiting at a cross light at an intersection, not knowing how to cross the street because no one taught them, right? They came here and I guess their family just never actually ended up teaching them how to do it properly, and then you see them struggle. You see them waiting there a long time, right? And
did not know that.
You have, Yeah, but I mean, I don't know how common it is.
Yeah,
I'm
I don't
just
think
saying,
it can't be
he
crazy
has
common.
he
'Cause
has an
at the end of the day, you
anecdote.
do just press the button and you wait for the green man, or it's not green, white man, to pop up on the little LED thing.
Yeah.
He's not green. I can't
Once
confirm
again,
and not green.
throwback to.
Oh
Ooh,
man,
that was
yeah,
rough.
yeah, yeah.
And I think that was the biggest fear episode or something
It
like that,
was,
where you
yeah.
talk about it. So if you want to check it out, there's a clip of that story, so you don't even
But we
have to
gotta
watch the
link it.
entire
We gotta
episode.
link it. Tom almost
Yeah,
died.
yeah.
Part two, three, something like that.
I'll try to link it if I remember. I might forget. Sometime sometimes you forget these things. But yeah, but that just reminded me of that anecdote, and also that anecdote, did make an impact on me. It really just made me think that, you know what, it's true. Some of these basic things, because as a child you had to learn, and
Yeah,
like you said, you weren't entirely comfortable doing it until like
initially, yeah.
early in high school, right?
I got
So
my first taste of it kind of like late in elementary school when I'd walk to 7-Eleven after school.
yeah,
But that was like an easy path. That was like one route that I knew, and it didn't have any big intersections. It was very close to my school, which, like I mentioned before, was very close to my house. I'd always let my mom know beforehand exactly where I was and whatnot, and if I wasn't back soon enough, to start worrying and whatnot. So that was like my first taste of it. But let's say I needed to walk somewhere I had never been before, or something like that, and I needed to like look at a map and like figure it out and then go from there. That wasn't until like mid to early high school that I started figuring that out.
Yeah. So really, if the urban planning, if streets especially are designed in the way I was talking about with Netherlands, and if there are if they are like older historical centers that we've talked about, then you'll have streets that's very easy to cross. You have streets that's essentially shared by cars and people and bikes, right? Instead of being so car centric, right? Instead of being so uncomfortable for people to cross, especially people who are just not so familiar with it, whether it's elderly people, whether it is people who are not used to the way this is designed, or to kids who are just they're young, they're inexperienced, they're just not as comfortable and independent with interacting with the environment in general, especially dealing with intersections like that and cross sites. So all these things could be alleviated, could be ameliorated when the urban planning thinks about it and plans for it, right? So a lot of things we talked about today are things a lot of people don't think about, but the environment in which we live in is so important. And I'm sure we could talk about like architecture in a different episode, and interior design and those aspects as well, because the environment we live in is so important in so many ways. And we've talked about some of the other ways our environment really impacts us, with culture, with religion, with other things we interact with, right? With how university is, like many aspects of our environment, right? But with urban planning, the spaces that we share with other people, the kind of in between
The connective tissues.
areas. Yeah, exactly. Like we're going from one place to other all the time. Like that's how we live our lives, and we stay in particular places, particular areas. You want all of those to make your life better, to make your experience more enjoyable, to allow you to that's better for your well-being, that's better for you mentally and physically, and urban planning in particular ways could really allow that, right? So what I said today might not be everybody's cup of tea, and might not be the perfect vision for them, but most of what I said, I feel like would benefit most people, will make their lives better in many ways.
The nice thing about a lot of the stuff we talked about is that it's not like some other issues where it's very one or the other. You can implement a lot of these strategies in a lot of these cities, and you might not have the most walkable city in the world, but you could definitely make everything more walkable, or just make the urban environment more
exactly
enjoyable somehow, even if it's not 100% perfect. You can make improvements to it. that are feasible. So even though certain things might not be viable, you can still do a lot for the improvement and betterment of your community. Well, not you yourself, but your government can do it for you. Yeah.
And a lot of that does come from you. There are people who are advocating for it. There are people speaking out to it. They're creating communities that talk with the local government to promote these things and talk about the importance of it. Who do show up to vote on particular issues because local government, they hear your opinions. Park and Recreation, the show, they actually talk about some of the process and how that kind of looks like. A very great comedy show, by the way, Parks and Rec. The writing is great for most of the seasons. Parks and Rec? Oh man, they're very similar in some ways, but they're actually very different in others. And it's hard for me to say, man. I feel like I like the characters in Park and Rec more. Yeah?
If you had a kid, what are you showing them first?
Ooh. First. Actually, I'd probably show them The Office first.
Yeah? Sassy.
Yeah. But there's no reason why you can't watch two of them at the same time.
That's true. That's also true.
Yeah. And also, you could appreciate both a lot. I like both shows a lot. But also, what you're saying is huge, both in the way you're talking about it, how you can make it more walkable, right? You can introduce various elements of it that's going to help a lot of people in the community. That's going to provide more options and possibilities for the people who do want it. So the other thing that really ties into what you're saying is that those people who love who love driving, who likes just, being in a car and doing everything by driving, even when it's 5 minutes away, they could still do that in many cases, unless it's a really, really walkable place that's designed that way. And most places are not going to be that, right? There are some places that are, and I personally actually really like those. So what they basically do is make the car go the long way, kind of on the outskirts, and everything in the center is all just walkable with some bike lanes, and everything is really cozy. It's very people-friendly, and the vibe is just really nice. So that does exist, and I personally really like that, but I'm not going to promote that to everyone because I know that people who love driving, who love cars.
That's one of the solutions that just wouldn't be scalable to like the entire city. You couldn't get the entire city on that wave, but you could build communities for people like you who enjoy that.
So I'm glad I brought that up, and that all comes down to you and your point. But like I was saying, like you could still drive and do all these things that way. That's gonna and actually it's going to make it easier for you because less people are going to be driving. The traffic is not going to be as bad. It's going to
be a better driving experience overall in general, depending on the changes that are made, I suppose, but
So it's probably going to be like a better experience for you as a driver as well, right? So overall, like implementing some aspect of that can only be beneficial. Depending on how far you want to go and what you want to implement, okay, maybe some people won't actually be happy and might actually, but when you're just going towards that direction and implementing some of it, it's literally just going to be beneficial for basically everyone involved. And like, you don't want to live like that. You don't have to. And like I said, it's actually going to make it easier for you to live the way you want with the car because less traffic and all those things. So, something to think about and something that I have thought a lot about.
Absolutely. Food for thought. Good to think about these things.
Yeah, for sure. Especially, this is one thing that I feel like people really don't think a lot about.
Oh, yeah, no.
So I'm glad we're talking about this today. Yeah. But I think that's everything that I really wanted to discuss in terms of this specifically. I'll end off before we go into highlights of the week quickly. But I'll end off the actual main part of this episode by saying that in the blog post I've written about why I don't want to have a car, which is related to this very much, but also kind of focus on why I don't want a car specifically, like the title suggests. One thing I say is that I don't want to have a car in the same sense that I don't want to be in a wheelchair, right? I think you could live a really great life in wheelchair, and I think if I were to put in a wheelchair and cannot walk, I could still live a really fantastic life. But I think I could live better by not, right? Mm-hmm. So I think of it as a restriction. I think of it as a disability almost in a way, right? I think I should be able to conduct day-to-day activities without a car. I shouldn't be forced into driving. A lot of people in this, because the way it's designed, they think car as freedom, right? Is it really freedom?
I feel like it depends a lot for the way you look at it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I see what you're talking about, because like nowadays we've been talking about it for like 2 hours now. There's cities are designed where you almost need a car to conduct yourself in many aspects of life. But I was thinking about this a lot as we were talking about it. I was like I mentioned at the beginning, cars kind of enabled a lot of the modern urban planning that we see nowadays. And let's say you're working for like a super big company. Nowadays, more people are working online, so it's less of an issue. But let's say they only have one office in like a given area. Like in BC, they only have one office for, say, I don't know, some company, let's call it company A or whatever. They only have the one office, right? And you can't, and I live in Surrey, and let's say the office is in Vancouver. Maybe, it doesn't make sense to set up an office in Surrey if they only have so many people employed. Like, let's say it's a small office, you only have 20 people in the office, and that's all you need for all of BC. Then it makes, you can't make the office, have one office in Surrey, have one office in Vancouver, one in Richmond, one in there. So in a certain way, I feel like cars still give you freedom. The urban planning is what makes it restrictive. The urban planning is restricting your freedom because you just can't do stuff without the car. The cars allow you to do
so like I see like you could move to Vancouver, right? More the urban planning could have a public transit that conveniently gets you faster. So like there are different solutions to that with the way I see it. Though, like I think I just feel like I shouldn't need a car to do basic day-to-day things. I just feel like there's absolutely no reason why, to just buy groceries, to just go to the gym, to just being a nice environment for a walk, right? Like very basic things. I agree with you there. Like there's no 100%. Reason why I should need a car to do that. And for me, I think, solutions, like if you really want to live in a place that's far from where you work, then okay, maybe a car is your best option, especially if it's more a kind of remote place. It doesn't even make sense for like public transit to actually reach out to that place anyway, right? If it's just gonna be like a very, very few people living there, right? If that's what you're looking for, but your job is way out somewhere else, then the solution for you really might just be driving, right? So in that sense, I guess that's gonna be what gives you the freedom to live in the place you want to live, the way you want to live, but also to work the job that you want to be working, right? So that's going to be your solution. The car is going to provide you freedom for that, right? And I talked about all the different scenarios I can think of why someone might want to have a car and why it really makes sense. Like you could be basic things like you just are a big fan of cars, right? You're into it, like that's kind of your hobby. Maybe you're into driving, right? Or maybe you have hobbies like surfing or paddleboarding or kayaking or something that needs to be done in a particular place and has the equipments involved that needs carrying, and you literally need to have a car to carry the equipment and then drive yourself to a place that allows you to do it, right? Unless you literally live right by the beach, by the lake or something like that, then like you're just not, because public transit isn't going to allow you to carry that type of equipment.
You can't
and probably not going to, like,
right.
Yeah, exactly. And also some people just love road trips, right? Yeah, they love going from one place to the other. Maybe some people love like camping and whatnot. So there are plenty of situations where it makes sense to have a car for someone. It's worth the financial cost as well, right? And overall, that's just going to provide them the freedom to live the way that they want to live. I'm just talking about that for
Oh yeah,
me.
okay, yeah,
I
sure.
think the basic things that I want to do and the way I want to live my life, I really do feel like there's no reason why I should need to have a car to be able to do those things conveniently, and I think for a lot of people, they're probably in the same situation, but they don't really think about it that way, right? Because the urban planning, because the car centric focus there, right?
Yeah, 100%. They just haven't really thought about it. Yeah, it's one of those things. It's just, it's not. What's the word? It's not take it for granted. I don't know. You just kind of accept it as the status quo. It's just the way life is. You just don't realize that there's something beyond that. There's something else you could do. Yeah.
Yeah, there's plenty of things like that actually. This is once again off topic, but this is also kind of the end of the episode, so I'll just say it. But one thing like that for me recently was about a month ago. I did a war history interview with a retired gentleman who's immigrated here when he was a teenager from Italy. And one thing that he talked about that really made me think quite a bit about and realize what I've kind of taken granted for, something that I've never thought about in that way, is that teenagers in Canada are able to just find jobs easily. And I think I brought this up in one episode before, maybe. Like it's pretty incredible how that is available to just teenagers. Like it's very minimal effort for teenagers to just find a random job, and the pay isn't even that bad.
Yeah,
like you could make really great spending money. You could make you could save up for
University.
a decent amount of university, at least tuition, right? And depending on what program you do, how well you are time management, and also the course load you take, you could work part-time while you're in university, right? So there's a lot of opportunities for teenagers and young people in general that's not necessarily available everywhere else, right? Some places it's just hard to find a job in general, and for teenagers to be able to have the opportunity here really goes to show the possibilities that exist in Canada, and kind of the economic status here, right? I feel like it's a good indicator of how the economics really is by looking at whether teenagers could actually find work regularly, if that's a thing for people.
Yeah, it's an interesting factor to consider.
Yeah, because I never thought about it that way. I never realized how special it is, how important it is. Yeah,
it seems like an interesting indicator to take a look at. That's quite good.
So yeah, because you mentioned this isn't something that people really think about or realize and think taken for and whatnot. I just brought up other thing that I really felt the same way about. So let's just end it with highlights of the week.
Highlight of the week for me happened very recently, about maybe like 3 hours ago. Yeah, 3 hours ago. Finished my final exam. We're free. Finished the semester.
Nice.
Final. Yeah. Let's go.
Very, very nice.
Very
That's
relaxing.
awesome.
Yes,
Glad
sir.
to hear that.
What about you?
Well, a highlight for me is that I did my final exam as well, and I handed in the projects. So the only thing left for me is a take-home exam that's due, end of the week, basically, end of the weekend, I think, 19th or something like that. So yeah, it's just one final thing I have to do, and it's take home, and I have time. I have nothing else to work on. So that's not going to be too bad. So end of the semester, having only one thing left to do that's not bad is definitely a highlight. And with that, Thank you for listening. Hopefully you have some food for thought. And we'll be back next week for the other episode.
All right.